Some current Microsoft 365 customers don't realize that Microsoft maintains 4 distinct clouds. There's the commercial cloud, the government community cloud, or GCC, the GCC High, and finally the DoD cloud. If you're not in the DoD, don't worry about that one. You can't get in there. Most small to mid-sized companies, even larger organizations, are totally okay being in the commercial cloud. However, state and local governments, like county, city governments, water districts, district attorneys' offices, law enforcement agencies, they really need to be in the GCC. The GCC satisfies many security and compliance requirements like CJIS that are very important for state and local governments. On the other hand, federal government contractors holding sensitive data like controlled unclassified information, they need to be in the GCC High cloud. So which cloud are you in? This is Brian Reilly from LiftOff. In today's video, I'm going to show you a couple tips and tricks to figure out exactly where your Microsoft 365 tenancy is provisioned. First, just a few words about LiftOff. We're a Microsoft partner that specializes in licensing to any of the Microsoft 365 clouds. We're happy to send you a quote for 1 license or 1,000 licenses. LiftOff also helps clients migrate to Microsoft 365. Our client base includes many customers moving to Microsoft 365 from any legacy system like Popper IMAP or even Google. We also help current Microsoft 365 customers do what's called a tenant-to-tenant migration. That's a migration that involves moving from one Microsoft cloud to another, typically the commercial to the GCC High cloud. For this type of migration between one Microsoft cloud to another, I'm going to give you a solid gold pro tip to consider during your cutover activities that's really going to save you time. So pay attention to the end of the video. Now, on to today's video.
Okay, here we go. The first thing I want to show you is probably a little bit simplistic, but I think it's a good place to start. It's the login URL for the commercial cloud, which happens to be the same URL for the GCC, so it can be a little bit confusing. login.microsoftonline.com. Now, of course, there are other URLs that'll get you into the commercial cloud. Portal.office.com is one that I really like. But whatever URL that you're using, notice that it's ending with the .com here, the .com extension, meaning you're going into the commercial cloud. So if you put in a valid login or username here and hit next, you're going to go right in with your password, of course. Now, this creates a point of confusion for state and local governments that think they're, or are pretty sure that they're in the government community cloud. There is no different URL, so you're really not sure. Once you log into your tenant, there's nothing inside of the tenant that says this is the GCC or this is commercial, so it can create a point of confusion. Now, if you're a GCC High client, you probably know whether or not you're in the GCC High because it's so hard to get there. But it's worth showing. The URL is a little bit different than the commercial URL. So login.microsoftonline.us, portal.office365.us would also work. But the point here is that the extension ends with .us. And if you're using a valid .us tenant name like I have here, and you click next, you're going to be prompted for your password and it will let you in. Next is something a little more cool. So there's something called the tenant lookup here. And this basically is kind of what this video is all about. Where is my tenant? Which cloud am I in? So if you simply put in your .on Microsoft tenant domain or even your vanity domain that you have, this tool will tell you where your tenant is provisioned. So for example, if I put in liftoffonline.com, notice how there's no special designation for GCC or GCC High. It's just Azure AD Global North America. That's the commercial cloud. Now, if I put in a GCC tenant, look what it says. Now suddenly we have a different tenant scope here, and it pretty clearly says we are in the government community cloud, or GCC. So if you're a state and local government out there, I really encourage you to visit this website, which I'll link to in the video description. Put your URL, either your .onmicrosoft.com tenant domain or your vanity domain, and it's going to tell you if you're in the right cloud. If you're a state and local government not in the correct cloud, please contact LiftOff and we can help you with a migration to the GCC. What about GCC High? Well, if you put in a GCC High .onmicrosoft.us tenant domain, or again, a vanity domain, watch what happens. Now we have a special designation for the tenant scope of GCC High. And you can see there's some other information about a data center migration between two GCC High locations. It's not important. But this is very good confirmation that I'm in the correct cloud. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is really a pro tip for anyone moving from commercial to the GCC High. Here at LiftOff, this is the kind of migration that we've been doing for 4 or 5 years. So we have a lot of lessons learned and best practices. When we first started doing this, what we saw was that it was taking Microsoft anywhere from 12 to 24 hours on the back end to recognize that your domain had moved from commercial to GCC High. That was causing issues with Office activations, mobile connections, and even configuring Outlook profiles. What we've learned since then is that we can do a couple things to speed up this back-end propagation on the Microsoft side. The first thing I'd recommend is opening a support ticket in your GCC High console once you've got your domain moved from commercial to GCC High. Do this right in the main Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And when you open your ticket, be sure to describe your issue correctly. You're trying to move your domain from the commercial cloud to the GCC High, and you would like for them to run their commands on the back end to flush DNS. What we've seen is that opening this ticket and having Microsoft do their thing on the back end really speeds up the propagation of your domain move from commercial to GCC High. Following that step, then you can get into your other cutover activities, such as changing usernames from the .onmicrosoft domain to the vanity domain, doing all of your other alignment in the GCC High. And then after about an hour or so, there's another site that you can go to check the propagation of your DNS changes. Again, I will link to this one in the video description, but this is really, really nice. So what you want to do is put in this domain into your browser, and then what you do is you put in your vanity domain right here at the end of this after the equal sign. I'll go ahead and put in liftoff.gov.onmicrosoft.us. This can be your vanity domain or your .onmicrosoft. Notice how my endpoints are showing .us. This means that the domain is fully propagated and fully provisioned in the GCC High. My Microsoft app activation should go through just fine now. My mobile phone connections and my Outlook connection should be okay as well. If you're still seeing the old commercial.com endpoints here, that propagation is not going through, and you'll probably have some trouble with the apps, your phone, and the Outlook profile.
If you like what you saw today, please consider commenting, liking, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you need to reach out to us, we're at liftoffonline.com. See you next time.